Hello everyone, so welcome to the next part of this, God that sun's bright. Welcome to the next part of this 12 hip roof video. I don't know if I explained, it's got 8 hips up here on the main roof and then there's a wraparound roof down below that's got another 4 hips on it. We have been having a few problems, but slowly we're working through them. So what I'm hoping to do today is work on both these 2 big ends, hopefully. I'm on my own today. So we finally got some hip material delivered. So we've got a pair of hips for this end because this is quite a big hip on this end. So we've got a pair of hips here. These are 6.5 meters long. No classy scarf joint for me, unfortunately. Look, just gang nailed a plate on the end. So what I'm going to do is pretty much, it's all fairly simple stuff. It's just on a bigger scale. I'm not going to go into too many details on how I cut this hip through these trusses by setting up a line. If you want to see how I've done that on a smaller roof, you can check out a video I've done here where I explain it all. So I'm kind of behind a little bit now because of these delays. So what I'm going to do is really just sort of set a camera up and you can watch me throw this up. And if there's anything I think might be interesting, I'll drop off and tell you what I'm up to. So anyway, let's get on with it. It's going to be warm today. Got my hat on and some sunscreen. So they're predicting sort of plus 30 degrees. So got plenty of fluids and going to get on with it. Whew. So it's 10 o'clock now. You can see I just got these two big hips in. They're quite unwieldy. You can see on this one, I think you can just see at the top, there's a great big kink in the top. I tried my hardest to pull it out, but I think where they've just gang nailed the extension onto the end of the hip, it's kind of, they haven't laid it flat. So the flying top truss that I was nailing into it is twisted. The top of the mono that I was nailing into it was bowed, so I'm really fighting here. But once I've got a bit more of this infilled, all those monos are in now, and it's just infill. I might try and unpick that and straighten that up. But so anyway, it's bakingly hot. It's 30 plus degrees already, and it's only 10 o'clock. So gonna have a sandwich, have some liquids, and then I shall start infilling these, and then move round to the other side. That's hard work. I'm chief cook and bottle washer all on my own today. It's getting warm now, starting to really feel the heat. I just thought I'd quickly show you, might not have seen it on the time lapse, but obviously, as I said in the previous videos, no bird's mouth on these jacks, which makes it quite nice and easy. So I'll just lift them up to a line and fire them to the ceiling joist. What you notice I did is when I put them on initially, I just put one nail in the top and let the bottom hang. And the reason for that is, what that's enabled me to do is I can put a clamp on the bottom before I nail it, and I can push the rafter up or down until I get the hip nice and straight. So it just saves me sort of nailing at the bottom and then pushing the rafter over at the top. I could put more nails in, but obviously if you make a mistake or anything, you know, it's only one nail you've got to pop out. You know, as I think in one of my previous videos, I've got something on the wrong side of the line. So I tend, if I can, just to put one pin in, you know, and then when I'm happy that it's all in the right place, I just now go and gang nail it up. That's got that hip end completed now. It's hard going actually. I don't know what's making it more difficult, the state of the truss manufacture or the 30+ degree heat, but that look, I don't know if you can just see that behind me. What a nice plain still down there, even though the trusses aren't great. And I do get asked quite a bit on some of my comments about striving for sort of a certain standard or high standard, and I like to try and attain the best standard I can. And people say, well, you know, do you need to recognise when you need to be chasing a top stand and when you don't? And as much as I would love all of these cuts and everything to be super flush and super tight on this truss roof, unfortunately I can only really work with what I've got, and this one isn't great. So, you know, I'm not going to turn myself inside out to try and get all of this to run in perfectly. The fact of the matter is, and I can't believe I'm saying it, once it's all roofed in, you know, it'll look absolutely fine. And I'd like to think that, you know, a lower standard for me is still a good standard. So that's all in now. I'm really, really parched. I don't know what I'm going to do actually. It's midday. I need some more fluids. Started to feel a little bit dizzy. I don't know whether that's because of the heat or just because I've had a busy weekend, but obviously don't want to carry on like a fool in this heat and end up doing myself a mischief. So going to get something to drink, get some fluids on board, and then I'll see how I feel about that other end. So as I said, even though those trusses aren't the best, I don't know if we can just hopefully see down there, there's a really nice flat roof line down there. So it's probably up and down a little bit, maybe 10 mil because of those monos. Some are up a little bit, but again, that's pretty good down there. So, and I've got my hips fairly straight up there. We'll see. I can't even see what I'm looking at. And maybe, like I said, there's a bit of a kink in that other one. I may try and sort it out, but I might just leave it. But yeah, really happy with how that's gone, all things considered. So I'm going to have a look at setting out this other end. Obviously, most of the setting out's done, most of the difficult stuff. What I need to do is pretty much the same as the other end, is set a line up to cut these flying rafters off. And what I'm going to show you, it could be easy to sort of get confused here, but it's pretty simple. So if you just imagine, as I said before, this roof is just one long roof that comes through the middle here, and it's got a hip each end. The only difference is that the trusses this end are sat on these girders instead of on the plate. So what I mentioned in one of the earlier videos, I had to bring a line through, but you can't quite see it now. Maybe if I put it under there, you might be too. Can you see that? Had to bring a line through to signify the outside of the plate up that end, and that's this line here, you see. Now I haven't made a mistake here because this girder sits 7.5 mil outside that truss, and that's purely because the bottom chord of these main trusses was 15 mil longer than the outside plate to outside plate. So we had to accommodate that, because obviously we do. If you imagine that's here, look, can you see there? Same again, that that's 7.5 mil longer. So rather than me cutting it back here square up to fit in those shoes, I've just allowed it that extra 7 mil longer. It's all key to sort of setting this out is making sure that you allow for the difference between the plate to plate and the bottom chord, because sometimes they're longer. It's pretty much done like that, so that it's better to have it maybe, you know, 20 mil longer. The bottom chord of the truss is 20 mil longer than the site measurement, than 20 mil shorter. It gives you a bit of tolerance. So basically, back to what I'm talking about, this line here signifies the outside of the plate, and we just basically bring it across to here, and then there's your marking. Then that mark there is a true striking point of the hip, and you can see pretty much what I've done. I've marked it just so it looks familiar to the other end. I mark each side for the hip material, 17.5 mil each side is a 35 mil hip, and then if this was a normal hip, look, I then cut that across there. But obviously that's not what we're doing here, because the hip doesn't run right the way through. What I'm simply going to do, I've got my height above block plate here, so what I'll do is just slide that in, look, as normal, so that this outside edge meets the outside of the plate, fix that down, and then I'll run my line. It'll be on this side, because obviously we're cutting those flying rafter tails, because we're cutting those flying rafters off up there on the right hand side. And don't be put off by the fact that this is lower than that, because the roof has turned 90 degrees. So this is the measurement we're interested in. So this runs through flush all the way through here. So again, what I'll do is nail that down, pull the string line up there, and cut them off as usual. And then when I come to cut the bottom of this hip, I shall probably just extend, as you can see here, I'll probably just extend it down. Probably better from the top here, look. I'll probably just extend the hip down until it touches this triple here, and then maybe just put a single splay cut on it. It doesn't need any more, as long as it's as long as we've got the right height above plate here, and you know it fits down onto the plate, and we can nail it to that. That's all we need. So I can get that set up, and that should be fairly straightforward. And I'll do exactly the same for this end. You see, exactly the same again. This measurement here is 7.5 mil inside where the length of the bottom chord of the truss was, and the measurement from this this line here to the corresponding one at that end was exactly the same as the outside plate to outside plate on the other side. Again, look, we've got, that's the hip striking point, the centre point, and then I've come either side. Excuse, I put a few too many ticks on here, but that's the exact centre point of the hip line, and I've come 17.5mm each side, so exactly the same again. I've got my height above plate block here, look, just slide that out until it hits the edge of the plate. Same again, we can then put a line from this point here up to the point where the two rafters meet, and we can cut those off the same as I've done on those others. So don't know how much more I'm going to do today because I think it's well 30 degrees, so I felt a little bit dizzy earlier and started to get a bit of a headache, so you know, don't want to keep pushing on. I'm here on my own today, so I might have to do the sensible thing and maybe just I've got my head around this, and maybe I'll just call it a day for today. Yeah, I think we'll just have a quick check of the van, see what the temperature says. Let's have a look in here, what we've got there. What's that say there? Hang on. What's that say? 33 degrees. So, yeah, I mean, that's... I know these vehicles, when they're sat still, maybe the air's not moving, so it's perhaps reading a degree or two higher, but that's a good solid 30, 31 degrees. So that's enough for me. I'm melting. Right, it's a new day and it's much cooler today. I think it's probably going to be about 25, 26 degrees, slightly overcast, which is going to keep the sun off me. So I'm literally going to get on and get this in. I'll quickly show you before I cut this hip in what I've done, explain how I've ended up with a splay cut on the bottom of this hip. So basically what I've done, as I explained, this represents where the hip would be. This is the centre of the hip, and as I said, as it went down to the corner of the plate, that's the striking point. What I've had to do is chisel a little groove in there to put my tape in. So normally what I do is measure from the top left-hand side of where the two rafters meet, and I'll measure down to this. Hang on, I'm just going to pencil out. I'll measure out to this exact point here, you see. Ignore this, this is what I said earlier, this is just the difference in the plate to plate and the bottom rafter cord. So I normally measure to there, and I've taken that measurement. So what I've done is measured down from the top of this hip here, and that's this measurement here, you see. Now normally what we do is we cut that off, and then this bird's mouth here will sit nicely in here, because obviously we would cut this off. Now what I've done, you'll see there's another line here. So this line is about 10mm further forward, and what that line represents is the increased distance between this point here that we measured, and as that line carries on down and hits this triple, that's that 10mm there. So I've cut that, and it's along that line, so it's not a projected line, it's on the seat cut and the 45-degree line, which is what this seat cut is here. So I know I'm panning around quickly, sorry. So basically I'm going to let that cut come all the way through, and then that'll meet up there with just a splay cut, you see. So now all I need to do is cut this off at 45 degrees and cut that off square, and that should fit in there, and you should be able to see that this line will correspond, hopefully, and when I put it up, will correspond with where this line meets here. This is the edge of plate and the outside of the hip. that's that bit filled in. As you can see, it's pretty much the same as the other end. Hopefully I haven't repeated myself too much. Slightly different, as I said, because we had these hips. Although they're a standard hip, they're not sort of penetrating through the corner of the building, so to speak. I'll just show you what I was talking about earlier about this blade cut down here. Look, you see, if you can just see down there, hopefully. I don't know if I can see that, but you can see those lines I talked about, how they've all matched up now. As I said, this line here would have dictated the corner of the plate if it was running, the outside edge of the plate if it was running back, but obviously it's going into these shoes. So yeah, I mean, we have to remember that these 4 middle trusses on here are low, but again, this is sort of this hip roof end to end is complete now. It's bizarre, but it's just got a little bit stitched on each side. But we've got a fairly decent line down through there. When I pack those 4 low ones up, and we've got the same on this side, you might just be able to see, you can see those trusses standing up at the end, or more, that these middle 4 are low. But yeah, I'm really happy with that. It's gone really well. I had to cut these little jacks in down here. Didn't show that because I just don't want to overbore you. To be brutally honest, if I had my way, what I'd have done here is these have now got diminishing trusses going in here, which forms a valley down the other side. If I had my way, I'd have just put a piece of ridge through there and cut valley jacks down onto this hip here, which would have then been a valley rafter / hip rafter. But obviously I've got to fit what they've sent, which is diminishing trusses. And if you just have a look down here, you can now start to see this sort of end flank of roof. You can see it start to come together. If I just move down there, look, we've got a really nice, I'm really pleased with that, get like satisfaction out of that. Nice clean line all the way down there, everything comes in, all the hips, everything right up to the top. So as I said, once I do this infill here with these diminishing trusses, and then it's pretty much the same this end. I've got to try and get my head around this, because these hips that come up here sit on a diminishing truss, and the way, it's really hard to explain, but the way that the computer designs it, certainly this company, they don't sit the last common truss in the centre line of the roof, they set it back. So I'm not quite sure I'm going to do that. I'll try my best with the diminishing truss, but it may well be that I scrap that and put some hand cut in there. But anyway, that's all I'm going to show. That's both these hip ends done. The next thing I shall do will be to get my head around this end. As I said, it's going to be, I have to think about that a little bit, do these little bits of infill, and then we're nearly getting there. So I hope you found it interesting, me doing these big hips, and thanks for watching.